everyone. This is Al Fadi, and welcome back to this new video series on analyzing a brand new book that deals with some examples of corrections that were done to early Quranic manuscripts. The book is by Daniel Brubaker, and we encourage all of you to get a copy of it because it's going to be extremely powerful. It is based on some of his research that was done for his PhD dissertation, and more of these corrections will be released at a later time. And with me here to assess this book is Dr. Jay Smith, and we've been doing a number of videos already or episodes related to this topic. We built already the foundation for why these corrections are important. And I'll turn the table now to you, Dr. Smith, to continue this fabulous discussion.
Right. It's great that I'm here. It's great that you invited me. I'm so glad that I can finally help Dr. Dan Brubaker. This is the book right here that we're highlighting. It is published. You can get it on Amazon.com. Please go get it. And what we're going to do, and what we said in the last episode, we're just going to unpack each one of his 20 corrections plus one. So let's go to correction number 2. Let's go and look at it. This is an eraser again in the Petropolitanus, which is the manuscript that is in Paris at the Bibliothèque Nationale there. It is from Surah 42, Ayah 21. And Al-Fadi, what is that? What is that word that's there that we're looking at, where the green arrow is pointing?
Lahum. Lahum. Okay. Yes.
And what does lahum mean?
It can mean something like to them, basically.
Okay. But that's not what it was originally.
That's
if you look, you can see there's an eraser underneath. You can barely just where the arrow is pointing. You can see that there is a eraser, and they've written over top, and you can see it's in a completely different color of ink.
That's right. So most likely what happened is this. I'm just taking a shot at it. Just to show people how simple these things could be. It would have been lahu, meaning to him, and then it was fixed to be like this, lahum, from waw to mim, basically.
So the lam he has been changed with lam he mim.
Correct.
And so lahum, to him, has been changed to for them.
That's right. So, and I would say you're right. I mean, it's lahu, again, another way of reading it, and then they corrected it to add the meme.
Or do they have associates who enacted for him? Now reads, or do they have associates who enacted for them?
Correct.
So simple as that, but why did they go from him to them?
Well, I mean, it's obvious that probably the context itself doesn't permit something about an individual or singular, or they wanted to match the standardized copy, which is the 1924 Cairo Quran.
It's actually the second. They had to standardize it to this book here, the Hafs text, which is what they're using all over the world now. Remember in the last episode, we mentioned that in Cairo they needed to do this, and they had a committee from Al-Azhar who made this, who chose the Hafs text, a student who died in 796. That was just in Cairo, and that was in 1924, so 95 years ago. By 1936, when King Farouk came into power, they realized that it was so successful. All the tests in Cairo were now standard. They got the same answers from everybody because they were using the same Quran, that they decided to make it Egypt-wide. So all the Qurans in Egypt had to use the Hafs text.
That's right.
It had only been for the city of Cairo, and that was the educational authority that wanted it there. And they called it the Farouk edition, named after King Farouk because that's when he came to power. So all of Egypt now had one standard Quran, the Hafs Quran. Then in 1985, King Fahd, over in Saudi Arabia, saw what was happening in Egypt, and he said, hold on a minute. We need to make this worldwide.
That's right.
And so it was the Saudi Arabians in 1985. 1985, we're just talking about, 34 years ago, made it official that this text, the Hafs text, was now the standard text for the whole world. So this standard text has only been around officially worldwide for 34 years, which makes me older than this text. Ooh, that makes me feel good. Suddenly I feel old, actually, is what it really makes me. So this text of the Quran has not been around for 1,400 years. It's not even been around for 95 years. That was just for Cairo, one city.
Yeah.
It's not even been around for all of Egypt until 1936. It has only been around for 34 years, this official text. So when Muslims say, yes, they memorized it, and they talk about this girl here and this little boy here who's memorized the entire text, they're listening to this little girl and boy, and they are impressive. They are impressive. What are they reading? They're reading the Hafs text. They're reading this text. The only reason why those girls and little boys all over the world are getting it right is because they have something to read to know what they're getting right. They're certainly not reading the Warsh or the Al-Duri, they're not reading the Khalid, they're not reading any of these other 31 that we have been able to find. They're only reading the Hafs text. That has only been able, they've been only able to do that for 34 years, excuse me. Can you see? We need to nip the bud on this and say, folks, be careful when Muslims say they memorized it. They've only been able to memorize this text for 34 years, and in Cairo for 95 years.
That's right. That's right. And this is so damaging, of course, because we're talking about a book that Muslims believe it's 14 centuries old, when in fact you hear these facts now. It's not that long. Even if we say it's 95 years old, still nowhere being 14 centuries ago.
Okay, now let's go back to that slide again. There's the lahum, which used to be lahu, and now it's lahum,
Right.
they, instead
That's
of
right.
he.
That's right.
When do you think then that lahum was corrected?
It would have been later. No
Later
doubt.
than what?
Later than the original writing of this particular
So
manuscript.
this is not Ibn Mujahid. This has nothing to do with Uthman. You're saying later than the standardization in Cairo, possibly, hold on a minute, but that standardization in Cairo was not worldwide. That was only for Cairo. The standardization that became in Egypt, that was 1936. Well, that's only for Egypt. What about the rest of the world? So this manuscript here is in the Paris Library. Now, it is now in the Parisian Library. When was this standardized? In order to standardize it, you need to have a standard.
That's right. You have to have something to go by.
So it has to come after the standard.
Correct. And if the standardization took place in 1924, then one can make the case that it was done after that.
Are you going to make that claim now on television?
Well, I will make that claim until somebody proves me wrong, or I can discover something else to support the fact that it was done at a different time. But regardless of this, somebody discovered a wrong reading and corrected it. That in of itself is indicative of a mistake that was transmitted for a while, and later it was discovered. And now those who learned it one way have to now realize that they were saying it the wrong way.
With that in mind, let's now look at number 3. Let's look at the correction number 3 that Dan Brubaker is putting out there. Take a look at this slide, and you can see we have 9 different slides of 9 different post-production insertions of the word Allah.
Correct.
Now, these are from many different manuscripts. Dan Brubaker, when you read his book, go to his book, you will see he describes where each one comes from. They come from the Petropolitan, they come from the Samarkand, they come from the Topkapi. So there is a concerted effort to get the name Allah in there. Why is that important?
It's extremely important, of course. I mean, we can start with the same as presupposition we've been saying. It's to standardize it based on a 1924 reading. That's where you find Allah in there. And obviously, sometimes even to fix the personal pronoun, maybe it wasn't clear, or making a theological change here, indicating that this is speaking about Allah, not a different person.
It's I would say it's even something much more mundane than that. They had to do this because the Hafs text has Allah in it.
And that too, like I said, I mean, it's very clear here. You look at it, I mean, it's like it was added right here.
We're going to show it right now. There you can see.
Here.
Look at the blue arrows, the green circles that are coming up. Every one of those, you can see where the Allah has been added, one after another, all 9 of them up there. Now, Dan has found 12 of them. He just has 9 on this page. So this is only 9 examples of 12 that he has found. Primarily, he said, from the Fustat Umayyad Codex, which the Fustat is the city of Fustat outside of Cairo.
Yeah, and I shared with him some information also about the Samarkand, and he's still analyzing it.
So these are all post-production. These are human intervention.
Absolutely.
Looks like they're standardizing, and they're not even trying to hide this. This is above the line. This is, you can in many cases just with a completely different nib.
Yeah, they're squeezing it between two words.
So you can sometimes squeeze. You're right, much thinner. It's much later. These are darker. As you can see, these are standardization of a text to a standard. The standard only came into existence in 1924. We're going to keep reminding people of that. All of this had to happen possibly, more than likely, after 1924.
It's almost like Allah forgot about his name. That's basically what it was.
You can understand why this is so damaging. Now let's go to number 4, because here you have a eraser in the Marcel II. Now this, let me just explain. The Marcel II is from the National Library of Russia. Anytime you see NLR, that's the National Library of Russia, which is in St. Petersburg. These are all of Dan's pictures. He went there physically, got permission from the authorities there in St. Petersburg in Russia, and he was able to take these pictures. So this is from Surah 30. That means chapter 30, verse 9.
Right.
Now, it is an eraser, but there's nothing to replace it. Why is that damaging? To me, that is hugely damaging.
Well, because, here's what happened. They kind of like stuck with this word that is before it, and they had a choice. You erase the other word and elongate it, but it will look very obvious. Or it's possible that somebody just didn't bother to make any enhancements after they erased the word that they felt like it shouldn't be there, or we don't want to read it.
The word at the front is akibatu, which is the fate, and aladina,
Akiba, yes,
which is of those, comes after it. So something was in between the fate and of those that had to be erased, had to be eradicated, had to be censored.
Correct.
Obviously, how would they have known what to censor it unless they had a standard from which to
and it's quite
compare
possible
it with?
There is nothing at that time that makes him compare it to, other than maybe the standard, the 1924, doesn't have anything in here, and therefore they had to erase anything that was added.
Now, Dan says that the size of the eraser suggests a word which was 4 to 6 letters, and he said there are some possibilities. He said it could be kulumin, all of, or katiran min, most of, or it could have been also
Al-Yahud,
which is the Jews,
right,
and or al-Nas, which is the people. So there are many possibilities what you could have put in there. So it could have been the fate of the Jews, of those Jews. It could have been the fate of all of them or most of them. So there's many ways you could put it. But it's obviously, though that would have been fit to put those words in there, they could not keep that word in there or those words in there because that would not parallel the Huff's text that we're using today.
Right.
So this is sheer censorship for no other reason than to standardize the text.
And the standardization, let's focus here. We're not talking it was done early on. It's done later, 14 centuries later, which mean there could be a possibility down the road another standardization might take place.
I would suggest that all is a standardization that's been since 1924. Now, let's take a look at this book. The next slide we want to look at actually goes to this cover here. Take a look at this cover, and you can see this is the cover he has on his book, The 20 Examples of Correction. This is correction number 5, chapter 6, verse 91 to chapter 6, verse 97. Surah 6, ayah 91 to 6, ayah 97. This is from the Museum of Islamic Arts in Doha, which is in Qatar. This is one, again, that he took. This fascinating. He's looking at 4 different problems here with just this one page. That's why I think he put it on his front cover. The word Allahi. Why don't you read it there? The word Allahi, against him.
That's right.
Has been written over in chapter 6, verse 93. And following the words, and go ahead, can you read that?
The words in there, bima kuntum taquluna.
For what you, plural, used to say.
Correct.
Yet Allahi is not in the 1924 Huff's text. Here's a problem. It's not in the standard text.
That means it's part of a different reading.
So that's number 1. Can you see number 1? It's up the top there. So this is fascinating.
And I can show the people. It's right here. This is the one that we're talking about.
So there is an eraser. They had to erase it, and then they had to introduce this word there in order to standardize it. Can you see it's in a different ink that he's circled there?
Absolutely.
Can you see it's also in a different style of handwriting?
That's right.
Much, much later. Now let's look at number 2, which is just below it to the right. Allah, about
right here.
Allah,
That's right.
has been written in the margins. It's not even in the script. They're not even trying to get it in the script. They're not putting it above the line or below the line like they do many times. They're putting it off to the side in the margin itself. But oddly, they didn't bother to erase Alehi. That it is intended to supplant. They were supposed to erase Alehi.
And that's the thing, here's what I meant earlier, that they have looked at this inseparable pronoun and they replaced it with Allah to indicate that this inseparable pronoun has to do with Allah. But the problem is they did it and they forgot the old one.
To me, this is ineptitude.
Yeah.
Fascinating that someone who knows Arabic that well, because this would be a native speaker in order to write this, and this is in Doha, so this is
and now this
the
is
Middle
the
East.
one that matches the Hafs.
This is now actually the Allah is the Hafs text.
That's right. This is the
Ilahi
one.
is not there.
This is the one that matches. They
The one in the
corrected it to
margin.
match, and they forgot the older one.
So that's already 2 problems we see on this page.
But here's what's so problem about this. I mean, somebody might come back and say, well, it's still saying the same thing, alayhi, meaning indicating now the him has to do with Allah. That's great. You can say this, But you told me it was preserved in the heaven. So which way it was preserved?
Yes. And if they're going to preserve it the way they think it is in heaven, why didn't they erase what there shouldn't be there?
That's right.
So-
And who decided what wasn't in heaven?
Caught with red-handed, so to speak, with their hands still in the candy jar. Number 3. Let's
That's
look at
why he
number
was
3.
red.
The word aladina, whom, has been inserted where it was at first omitted. And there you can see, if you could just circle it.
Right here.
There you go. You circled it in yellow there. It has been inserted. It needs to be there because it's in the Hafs text.
Yep.
Since it's in the Hafs text, canonized in 1924, they've got to insert. Can you see it's a different color? Can you see it's a different?
Absolutely. I mean, you can spot it from far away. I mean, it's darker, it's fresher, different writing style, and it's odd. The location of it is odd.
So that's number 3. Now let's go to the bottom of that slide, and you can see number 4. Here's the 4th problem. It seems pretty evident. You can just look at it.
That's
you can
right.
see there's a
Right
problem.
here.
And the word ya'lamun, they know, has been written over an eraser. So there was a word there. What's fascinating, they didn't erase it well enough. They should have done a little bit better job. Maybe they needed more modern pencils. The shadow of the original text can still be seen, and it appears to be baha. Waham. Now those are the letters. That's the consonant letters. There could be all kinds of different words.
That's right. That's
and
right.
Dan's going to go into that and explain that more in his book.
Absolutely.
But can you see, you have at the very top of the page a word that they should have erased. They didn't. They kept it in there. A word that has been added to the margin, which should be where the word they should have erased is. So two problems there. They have another word that has been added in aladina above the word above where it is now needed because to standardize it with the Hafs text. And then at the bottom, they know is been added. Ya'lamun has been added, but they didn't really erase enough of it to show that there is another word underneath, and we can probably start to understand what that word is underneath. I'm going to let Dan, in his book, actually explain that.
So this is just a taste of these changes and corrections. And we said, here is the book. Once again, I want you to take a good look at the title. 20 examples. In fact, Jay mentioned there is 21 examples. And if we want to really, give you a more clearer idea about the different corrections that Daniel looked at, it's in the thousands, as you heard. So this is just a taste of some of these things that existed in the early Quranic manuscript. And this is the intent of this series, is to highlight at least this particular book, but that's only a flavor of what is to come. Anything else you want to add, Jay?
No, you've summarized it very well. We will then move in to correction number 6 in the next episode as we unpack it, show the significance, and showing that in every case, every one of these corrections are a standardization, a censorship, a need to try to create one Quran. All of them done by humans. In every case, this is done by human hand.
And that's what we mean by the fact that the Quran is a product of human hands. It is not a divine book. Nowhere that it was revealed from heaven, and evidence is that people have been taking the liberty of making changes, all the way starting with Uthman, if we want to go that far. He decided what dialects should be in, and from there, people decided what standard reading should be used. Hopefully you're enjoying the series. Till we meet again, have a blessed day. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, hit the bell so that you don't miss future videos. And please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Sira International. And together we can introduce Muslims to the gospel of Jesus Christ. Thank you.